In terms of the biggest risks for the Asian market over the next few years, in my mind, they're mainly macro, trying to marry that up with your bottom-up stock selection and process. So things that go through my mind would be, what could happen to the renminbi exchange rate? How is US interest rates versus inflation going to play out? And lastly, what may happen to the Japanese yen with respect to yield curve control by the Bank of Japan? So, if I look at that, China, I think, is very much caught in a debt trap. You've got two options simplistically, one being deflate domestically, or the other is devalue the currency, try to generate more export growth and GDP growth that way, which I think is the least painful outcome for that country, and that's something that's in the back of my mind. If you look at US rates versus inflation, personally I think inflation will likely be higher for longer than what the market anticipates, and therefore that would likely lead to a more upward bias in increasing or higher interest rates. And don't forget, US rates basically set the cost of capital for the world. So again, the higher that goes, for the longer it goes, could have a depressing effect on markets here. And lastly, the Japanese yen. You've seen yield curve control in Japan, massive central bank balance sheet expansion there. In my mind, not sustainable. If they backtrack on that, that could lead to some Japanese yen strength, again, which will have ramifications for the region. So how do you kind of deal with this at a portfolio or individual security level? Really, I just try and ask myself, how would these risk factors play out at the individual stock level? For example, is the company an exporter or an importer? What currency is the debt in? Is it fixed? Is it floating, etc.? So that's how I manage these kind of risks or think about them in the first instance.